Some weeks in crypto feel like they are written with a highlighter, and this is one of them. Governance debates breaking out in public, transaction charts going off the scale, a major step in WebAssembly tooling, and a well used analytics platform preparing for its next chapter. Four stories, different angles, but all pointing to a space that's maturing in real time. Before we get moving, a quick heads up. If you want to support the work we do here on Ledger Live, you will find the donation details in the description below. No pressure, just mentioning it. Let's start with the exchange that got a lot of people talking. Naval Ravikant posted a short message on X saying that the old habit of trusting committees, multi-sigs, and so-called independent groups is past its expiry date. He didn't dress it up, he called these arrangements a flow. His point was clear: if you are going to talk about decentralization, governance needs to live on-chain and include privacy by default. That alone would have sparked discussion. Then Dominic Williams stepped in and said he agreed with the principle, but the real difficulty is in making full autonomy possible. You can say on chain governance all day long, but it only works at scale when the network can host heavy logic and large amounts of data directly. Dominic pointed to ICP setup as evidence that this isn't just theory. On the Internet computer, when a proposal passes, the network executes it itself. No back channel approvals, no waiting for humans to carry out upgrades. And the timing matters here. You have got a whole sector rethinking governance after a stretch where multi-sigs, committees, and off-chain influence have become the default in many places. Even chains with huge communities often end up with a tiny number of people pushing changes through. Naval's post came across as a pushback against that gap between marketing and reality. Dom's reply added the technical framing. Most networks treat governance as a social process, then record the result on chain. ICP takes that final step of letting the chain carry out the action, which removes the need for custodians. Of course, there are people who say automation can introduce its own risk. If a flawed proposal triggers an automated change, reversing it can be messy. Others argue that full automation gives everyone more predictability because no one can manually override the system. The interesting thing here is that both sides are reacting to the same problem, where who holds the real power inside a decentralized network. What the exchange shows is that governance is becoming a key metric for judging credibility. Fast block times and low fees get attention. But the question, who actually controls the network, gets asked more often now. Naval and Dominic, in different ways, pushed that conversation forward. Next up, let's talk numbers. Token Terminal posted fresh 24-hour data showing just how wide the gap has become between the busiest chains and the rest. The Internet computer cleared more than 350 million transactions in a single day. Solana, even with both transactions stripped out, clocked 64.2 million. If you count everything, Solana sits around 250 million. After those two, the chart drops sharply as we move across BNB chain, Tron, Near, Polygon, Aptos, and Avalanche. There are always caveats with transaction data. Different chains count transactions differently, and some networks focus on settlement rather than volume. But even with that in mind, the gap is too wide to ignore. Solana's number is interesting because both transactions often dominate its totals. Removing them gives a clearer view of user level activity, and Solana still comes in near the top. For ICP, the high throughput is tied to how the network is structured. Transactions are processed inside subnets rather than a single global chain, and supporters say that's what makes scaling possible. Critics counter that transaction definitions vary too much between ecosystems, so comparisons should be cautious. Both things can be true at once. High transaction counts don't tell you the full story about economic value, but they do show where developers are experimenting and where users are showing up. They also give a sense of momentum, and right now, ICP and Solana are ahead by a wide margin. The broader takeaway isn't this chain wins or that chain loses, but the fact that the top of the leaderboard is changing faster than most people realize. A lot of activity that would have lived off chain a year ago is now moving on chain, and some networks are clearly benefiting from that shift. Now for something more technical but potentially game changing. Wasp, the project working to run PHP on the internet computer through WebAssembly, has crossed a major milestone. It now passes 766 out of the 833 official PHP tests. That's a 92% rate across the full suite. But here is the important part. The remaining tests rely on features WebAssembly doesn't support, like networking calls and threads. If you measure only the test WebAssembly can handle, the pass rate jumps to 99.6%. Developers are already asking whether this means they will be able to move existing PHP and WordPress sites straight onto ICP without rebuilding them. The team says that's exactly what they are working toward. The plan is to create a plugin that handles the transition automatically, change the DNS, and you are running your site on chain. Before that happens, Wasp will go through heavier internal testing. They are putting together a program where members of their Wasp swarm can register for early access to the Wasp Nest, which is basically the WordPress canister environment. Those early testers will help the team see how the system behaves under real traffic and complicated setups. If Wasp stays on track, this could lower the barrier for people who want to move to decentralized hosting but don't want to rewrite their entire stack. It also fits into the bigger pattern of bringing more languages and frameworks into WebAssembly, so developers have more flexibility when they build on chain. This might not grab headlines the way price movements do, but for long term infrastructure, this kind of progress matters. And finally, ICP Tokens is preparing for a strategic transition after a strong first year. The team posted on the Definity forum explaining that the platform has reached a point where scaling requires more people and more resources. It launched in May 2024 and quickly became one of the most used analytics tools in the ICP ecosystem. More than 60,000 users, over 2.3 million views, and all of it driven by product fit rather than paid campaigns. The search traffic alone has made it a regular entry point for newcomers trying to understand ICP tokens. Behind the scenes, the platform was built to scale. It uses multi source data ingestion for accurate pricing, a hybrid architecture with ICP canisters and off chain components, internet identity authentication, and a backend tuned for real time analytics. They have also built strong SEO presence, which has helped keep the user members writing. But according to the team, growth has pushed the project beyond what a small funding group can manage. To unlock features like monetization, advanced APIs, and deeper integrations, they are looking for either a partner or an acquirer who can take the platform further. They have prepared documentation covering their architecture, metrics, data pipelines, and revenue roadmap. Qualified teams will get private access to that material. The goal is to find a group committed to the long term development of the internet computer ecosystem. The message closed with a thank you to users and the hope that the next chapter builds on what has already been achieved. It's a pretty honest update. Sometimes the right move for a project is in piling more work on the same team, but handing it over to people who can take it from a successful tool to a hardened long term product. If the right group steps in, ICP tokens could become the backbone data source for the ecosystem. All right, that's the roundup for this edition. A lot happening across governance, infrastructure, developer tooling, and ecosystem projects. If you enjoy keeping up with this side of crypto, feel free to stick around, drop a comments, and share your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.